D-Day, and let's take a look at what the PMO has said in terms of what effect did demonetization have on real estate. Well, banks have lowered their lending rates by about 1%, came from the PMO. Real estate prices have declined, which we've established. Also in our discussion, revenues of urban local bodies have gone up by 3 times, and consumers were allowed to pay dues to local bodies in demonetized currencies. So these are some of the big benefits of demonetization. But my question here is, what will it really take for demand to come back? Because what started before demonetization got worsened in demonetization, and then RERA and GST seems to be continuing. I'm going to come to you, Gulam. The big question here is that, look, a lot of this trouble which we see in real estate was prior to demonetization, lack of confidence, and all the business practices which were not right in real estate. Having said that, today, if I go on a RERA website, there are developers who are listing a project and giving you a completion date of 7 years from now. Why should I tell a buyer to go ahead and buy that project?
Well, obviously, there is no reason for one to really fall for those 7-year kind of long gestation periods.
Gulam Zia, 5 years is the least that I see on RERA website. I mean, nobody is even giving a date of less than 5 years. I mean, why wait for 5 years and get your capital stuck?
Well, for sure. Very, very valid point that you're raising. However, well, developers have their reasons because they want to play it safe and perhaps, ask for 3-4 years more than what they would have completed it in. However, that aside, there's another point that we have to also look at, that this is, today, if you look at the data, I'm sure Samir will support that. In last year and a half, new launches have kind of come to a grinding halt. It only means one thing, that whatever new launches that have not happened in a year or two of this period in between, someday after 2 years or 2 or 3 years, it will come back to hit all the buyers. That will be a time when there will be very little new supply coming in, new completion happening, and the demand will continue. And that can have a very scary impact on the market. And perhaps somewhere down there, the developers are also waiting for that moment where the lack of supply after 2 to 3 years may perhaps be a boon for them, or kind of situation for them to come back in the market and start asking for the prices that they command. So possibly this is one way of, on one side, playing it safe, on this side, looking at the silver linings. Perhaps after 3-4 years, there can be a huge upward pressure on price points.
But 2 to 3 years, you're agreeing that there will not be any pressure point on prices. Anuj Puri, would you agree with that assessment that, I'm just finding it very hard to go out there and tell the buyers, buy an under construction project and get the demand back into real estate? It's needed for the economy to grow, especially when you are not going to get a flat or have no promise of getting a flat for 4 to 5 years.
I would say 3 things, Manisha. The first is that the ticket price has to be more affordable. I agree what Samir said is that per square foot price will not come down. Buyer is not really bothered about per square foot price. They do not really understand. They are saying is, what is the overall ticket price? If you have to get the demand, you have to bring in more efficient, smaller apartments. You have to bring in apartments of less than 1.5 crores value in place like Andheri in Mumbai. That's the first thing. That's when your demand will come. Second, I agree with Gulam. What he said is that the demand and the supply imbalance we've seen in the last 6 quarters, every quarter, consistently over the last 6 quarters, demand has been greater than the supply. Not because that there are more home buyers who are coming in, just that the supply has depleted because of RERA. And we're seeing that the unsold inventory has started to come down from last quarter to this quarter, 9% reduction in unsold inventory. The third is that under RERA, there is now going to be sanctity, protection of the buyer. I still think is, and I'm selling a lot of residential now, so I can tell you buyer does not fully understand RERA as yet. We guys think is that, well, RERA has come in and, it should provide the benefit and the comfort to the buyer. Buyer, Manisha, is not understanding what this RERA is. So I am saying is that it will take at least 1 more year for the buyer to understand the sanctity of this law, which really protects the buyer.
Okay.
So I feel is that it's between 12 months to 18 months that you're going to start to see the market come back on 3 things: efficient, smaller apartments, your supply is dwindling, and hence at some stage demand will cross supply. Law of economics will show that the price will start to increase, and that under RERA, they will understand there's a huge amount of protection, even if they're buying under construction I agree with Gulam. What he's saying is that there has been overcautious dates given by the developers, and that's what happens worldwide. Even in Singapore, under RERA, developers will commit 2 or 3 years extra. But that water has to find its own course, and the buyers have to understand that this is the protection under the new law, and that the developers are going.
All right, Anuj. Okay, so 12 to 18 months is what you're saying. Rajeev Talwar, is a chicken and an egg situation, isn't it? There's real estate, which is an important contributor to GDP. And then you also have an economic connection. If your GDP does not grow, then you will not have housing demand coming back. Overall, if I look at demonetization and the impact it's had on GDP, do you think that in a couple of quarters that will be behind us, or you're not that hopeful?
I think it's a useless debate. I think the country has taken a very good step, and we're all going towards a more developed economy. The vision should be to create a $10 to $15 trillion economy rather than we're wondering about a step which was taken about a year back, and exactly a year back. I think when you're talking about, Manisha, you're one of the most experienced anchors and experts on real estate now. To say that why would I put in my money for a project which will take 5 to 7 years? I think the tone was exactly the opposite when people were giving a 3-year deadline. You know for a fact that when we go high-rise, there's more time taken. There's more time taken for mid-project approvals, and there is a new technology which comes in. There are many more wet points in a residential development. In fact, 3 years seem to be an artificial time limit, and now with RERA, when 70% of the proceeds are going to be kept in an escrow account, they will be totally devoted to construction capabilities. I think 5 years to 7 years, as Anuj very rightly gave the example of Singapore, is the right time to be given, because the penalties will be so hard on developers, whether they're delays caused by approval authorities, and I think we need to come to pre-approved projects. I think that is a sore requirement in the nation, that projects which normally should have taken each one going into a same process of approvals for affordable housing as for luxury housing. I think when we are talking of affordable amounts, anywhere from 50 lakhs to 1.5 crore, I think we need pre-approved projects if we need to keep timelines in place.
All right. So you're debating that fact that, look, why am I even singling out the timelines which are given under RERA? But then there's a lot of ready inventory as well for people to buy, which itself isn't finding enough buyers. I hope that at least comes back, as all of you say that, real estate has cleaned up. There are much lesser cash transactions, which is exactly what the government wanted. And also prices in the secondary market are down by 25 to 30%. Primary market has, of course, seen that reaction, and those are also down quite a bit. Gentlemen, thank you very much. I think the demo effect on real estate is partially at least has been met. The cleaning up of land transactions and approval process is a second step, which the government, I'm sure, is fighting for and looking at. It also is part and parcel of ease of doing business for India. So that's an important one on its agenda. Goodbye, and thank you so much for joining me.